Well, Wednesday and Thursday of this past week, we had some in-person classes at the Crown Plaza Hotel. I was excited to be able to teach 6 of those hours. It was really fun. The 4-hour class on Thursday on the contract was really a lot of fun. And some questions came up in that contract that I said I would email Byron and Austin and ask their opinion. So here is the information. First question I sent was, what do we do with the termination fee when the listing agent is a virtual company? Byron's answer is, my recommendation for a difficult notice address, that is virtual brokerage in Seattle, Washington, or Miami, Florida, is that your buyer's agent talks early with the listing agent to coordinate accurate e-pay of FedEx instructions for the seller. In other words, he is recommending the PayPal or Venmo at that point, but you have to get that information early. My second question was, what do we do with the termination fee when the notice address is the broker in charge's home address and there is no admin and the owner is not home, or the owner is even out of town? What if the listing agent is not available also? My recommendation, if extra time is needed to terminate under due diligence, start the procedures early in the due diligence period. For example, FedEx shipping, alternatively persuade the seller to properly extend the due diligence period. Would it be okay to have an attorney drop an addendum that states the termination fee would be due 2 days after the notice of termination? That came up in the class on Thursday. Byron's answer is, past South Carolina Forums Committees and South Carolina Association of Realtors Executive Committees considered having a set of 3 deadlines, that is, your inspections, negotiations, termination, or proceed. That idea of 3 deadlines was rejected because 1 deadline is simpler than writing a complex contract with 3 deadlines. I believe this is your 2-day to pay idea. If 8,000 broker in charge start having their lawyers creating forms, that has the potential to create confusion. The SCR 310 due diligence has been in the marketplace since 2012. SCR attorneys, broker in charge, and instructors have been teaching SCR 310 due diligence procedures for 10 years. Realtors have been using SCR 310 due diligence for 10 years. There are recorded webinars and articles on SCR 310 due diligence on the internet and YouTube going back to 2012. Introducing individual lawyer addenda is certainly allowed, but my recommendation is to use the forms and educate available to all realtors so more members know what is expected and how to do it. And those are Byron's answers. Let's look at what Austin had to say. Let me find Austin real quick in my emails. Again, the first question is, what do we do with the termination fee when the listing company is a total virtual company? He says in that case, the parties will need to use electronic options, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, or find a local firm to serve as a notice address. I'm assuming that's in it with PayPal or Venmo. But maybe a local attorney would agree to be the notice address. That's an interesting option. What do we do with the termination fee when the notice address is the broker in charge's home address and there is no admin and the owner is not home or even the owner is out of town? And what if the listing agent is not available also? His answer is, Austin's answer, that is why it is important to find out after ratification what the hours of operation are and when they would be able to receive the check. In that scenario, one of the options in my previous answer would also be the solution, meaning Venmo, PayPal. My third question was, would it be okay to have an attorney drop an addendum that states the termination fee will be due 2 days after the notice of termination, after the termination date? Austin's answer, that is not something I would recommend, is that is in direct conflict with the due diligence section. The better solution in that scenario would be to extend the due diligence deadline if parties need more time. Those are their answers. The due diligence contract coming out on June 13th. There's going to be a lot of excitement and a lot of confusion, and that I do know. I do not like the idea of Venmo or PayPal simply because it's so easy to have a typo and money goes to the wrong person. However, if we're dealing with a company out of Miami or Washington or wherever, and they don't even have an office in the Charleston area or the Anderson area or the Manning-Sumter area, that's a problem. So in those cases, we may be forced to use Venmo or PayPal. But oh my gosh, you better be so careful with the address. In those cases, we need to ask the listing agent to get the seller's Venmo or PayPal, whatever, information when you're making the offer and ratifying the contract, just in case you want to terminate it. The other thing that seems to be a huge issue is a termination fee being due if, in fact, you submit a repair addendum to the listing agent and the seller never responds to it. That can be a real problem, because whatever termination fee you put in that contract and the seller does not, the buyer does not want to buy it as is, then the buyer's going to lose that termination fee. They're going to have to pay the termination fee just because the seller never made an answer. If they want to terminate, they can always buy the house as is, but most people don't want to do that. I don't think that's going to happen very often, but I can see that it will happen because I know it's happened before with using due diligence. It's going to be exciting because there are pros and cons for the buyers and the sellers and the real estate agents. It is going to be good all over. All these little idiosyncrasies that we've come up with, there's not going to be that many of those. So just relax, let's have fun, let's do our job. Talk to you next week.